everyone. Welcome to Textiles and Tea with the Handweavers Guild of America. I'm Kathy Group. I'm the Advertising Marketing Manager for HGA, and I'm going to be your host today. Today's Textile and Tea is sponsored by Made in America Yarns. See all their beautiful yarns at their place in Pennsylvania, madeinamericayarns.com. We welcome questions today, and we will answer as many as we can in the last 15 minutes, but we ask that you use the Q&A and not the chat. If they go into QA, we kind of lose them. So today we are having tea with Lucienne Coifman. Lucienne has taught weaving for over 45 years at the Guilford Art Center in Guilford, Connecticut. And at the Creative Arts Workshop in New Haven, Connecticut, and in our own studio. She has conducted workshops throughout the U.S. and has included 4 convergences. For the last 35 years, Lucienne's been studying rep weave and experimenting with different fibers, but her main interest is centered on color interactions and patterns, using aid harnesses and using pickup techniques when needed. She has researched many unusual ways to weave rep weave, and that has not always followed the traditional path. Her weavings appear in Shuttle Spindle Dyepot, in Handwoven, and has been included in countless juried exhibits. Her book, Reps Weave, is a complete workshop for beginning and advanced weavers. Hello, Lucienne, welcome.
Hello.
How are you doing?
Thank you for inviting me.
You are welcome. We're excited you're here. So our very first question is, what kind of tea do you like?
Usually Earl Grey. I'm a coffee person, but sometimes Earl Grey.
Earl Grey, that's a good tea. So I wonder if you can tell us a little bit about how did you get started in weaving?
Well, first of all, you know, I was not trained as a weaver. I was a biochemist. I came to the States, to the United States, to do research for a few years. And then I started my family. I had 3 daughters. We lived in St. Louis at the time where within walking distance, there was an art school. And I saw that you could do a tapestry and build your loom, and I thought that was fantastic. So I took that first class there. And then, of course, I saw the big looms in the other room and decided, okay, well, I have to try this. And that's how it started.
That's great. Now, you mentioned that you didn't start out as a fiber artist. So we've had several guests that are both scientists and fiber artists. So what is the connection for you between fiber and art and your science? What's that connection for you? Do you see a connection?
Oh, yeah, I think so. You know, when you do research, you have to be very disciplined. You have to be very logic. You have to be also a little creative because you won't make very much headway. So I think it's part of it. You have to be really disciplined and follow a certain routine and so on, which is very much what weavers are doing. Okay, now, that's probably what I would say it is.
Now, you have written a book, and writing a book is a major undertaking. So how did you decide to write Reps Weave?
I'm laughing because actually I never thought of writing a book. But I would say 15 years ago in my home, I had Anita Louvera-Mayer, who is a good friend of mine. And she was looking at all what I had around and she said, oh, you must write a book. And I said, you're crazy. I'm not going to write a book. But she planted the seed and I said, why not? I try. And then I was really going crazy doing that. I was so nervous about it. Then I abandoned the idea, but not completely. And it's only 10 years ago, 10 years later, I would say, that 5 years ago, 6 years ago, that I happened to find the people that would support to do that. This book, okay, the weaving are mine, but it was a group effort. It was a whole crew that I had there. One of them is actually Susan Horton, who is the editor of Handwoven. Susan was my student many years ago. And I mentioned to her when I was at Convergence that I needed somebody to do my draft because I just couldn't do that very well. She said, oh, I'll do that for you. That was a big help there. And then I found an editor because of course I need help with my language, So I found a good editor very close by and somebody who put everything together. And that was it. I had a wonderful crew, a wonderful group of friends there. And it really worked very well. It was surprising.
Well, you ended up with a wonderful book. And I'm sure there's a lot of people going, I want someone to help me with my drafts. I don't think you were alone in that. Now, Rep Weave incorporates a lot of opposites, a lot of back and front, light and dark. Now, the use of opposites seen in this work, and I hope I pronounce this right, Tapuet Maze. Is this one of the reasons why Rep Weaves appeals to you?
I think this, Rep Weave, for this piece in particular, I really needed to have shadows and different shades and so forth. It was supposed to go into the Department of Reproductive Science at Yale University in the Physician Building. And I found this maze. I always wanted to make a maze. And this maze is a child and mother. And I thought, oh, that's perfect for the place. And well, you do realize that the underside is very black. It's completely dark. But I thought this bright piece, also people waiting in a waiting room there, have something to do. They can try to do the maze. And that was the main reason. But in general, Rep Weave, you do have a bright side, a darker side. You do have these opposites.
Oh, that's great. Somebody can do the maze while they're waiting. I love that. That's great. Now, your work is very balanced, and I don't necessarily mean symmetrical, but balanced in design and color. Like your work, A Study in Gray, which is on the left, is asymmetrical. And then on the other side, we got Through the Looking Glass, which is very symmetrical. These are great examples. Now, was this something that you understood and came to you quite naturally, or?
Well, this is so surprising. The Study in Gray is probably some of my first pieces. I mean, it's two pieces next to each other. And really, I have to kind of kick myself to be not symmetrical. And I was really surprised that you picked it up there, because it's unusual that I do something asymmetrical. The other piece, Through the Looking Glass, is completely different. It's actually what I call a shadow rep. It's almost like shadow weave, but it is all done in Rep Weave. So that's the difference. But being symmetrical, it doesn't happen very often to me. I do struggle.
I don't know if you say struggle.
I do.
Now, you're known for your very unique 3D Rep Weave. And this jewelry box that we have, this is just so beautiful. Now, how did you develop that? How did you come up with the idea of 3D?
Well, Rep Weave is very symmetrical. It's a stiff weave. It's a stiff weave. And I found that you really could have some nice rigid square if you wanted to. So why not make a box? It was also, what was important is to realize that by having two long rectangles rectangle and putting them on top of each other, you could really do that box. And in the construction, it's very simple. What is very difficult is to be very accurate in your size. It has to fit perfectly. And in repweave, sometimes it's very difficult to have things fitting perfectly or exactly the same size. I think it's one struggle of repweave.
Well, your work includes a lot of utilitarian work, such as purses, that box, runners, and this rug, which is just delightful, the hopscotch rug. Now, the definition of utilitarian is having regard to utility rather than beauty. And what surprised me was the word rather, that it's rather beauty. Do you struggle with this idea or definition?
No, I have to say in a general way, you know, what I make, I really try to find a purpose. It's interesting. I really don't do something just for nothing in purpose or anything that I'll be using it for. It's very, very rare that I just go and weave something by myself, just like that. And that rug was in my mind for many years, but I just could not figure out how to do the numbers in repweave, because numbers, you don't have curve in repweave, you diagonal don't look very good. So that finally I realized I could use the dots of a dice, you know, and make it that way. And that was a lot of fun to do. I mean, really, and I just want people to know that this is an 8 harness piece. I don't have more than 8 harness. I work only up to 8 harness. If I need something special, I will pick up. And there's a lot of pickup there.
Well, people were asking that question. Thank you for saying that. They were like, how many harness shafts are being used for that maze and the other one? So thank you for answering that.
Yeah.
Now, in your design process, do you use software or do you just draw everything out? And everybody wants to know, do you sample?
Yes. Well, sample only if it is something totally new, like what I'm doing right now. But for the other pieces, it's always, first of all, I don't use software at all for repweave. I don't think it lends itself very well. I use my profile draft. I'm a pencil paper person, which a lot of people don't use anymore, but they should, because I think you understand the process better. And that's how I do it. You know, I make my profile draft. I know more or less, there's a lot of, you know, calculation and things like that. Might put my color in place on paper too. And that's how it goes along. I sample, yes, I do sample the new pieces, the new, maybe non-traditional repweave that I'm doing maybe now. I do, because I have never done this before, and it always, it doesn't behave like regular repweave sometimes. So it's very important to do that. Yeah.
You've been weaving for a number of years, mainly because you started as a very small child, right? That's how you got all those years in. And I was wondering, what would you tell the younger beginning Lucienne? If you could go and talk to her, what would you tell her? What advice would you give her as a weaver or as an artist?
Well, personally, all right, personally, if I had to start all over again, well, I would not go into biochemistry. I really had three interests as growing up. I really loved foreign languages. I love science, and I love fiber in general. I used to sew a lot of my clothing. I used to knit. I used to do, but I was not weaving. So, but I could have done the art school. it would have been nice to do the art school, because I don't have some basic knowledge are missing.
I think you've made up for that. You may be beyond art school. Well, one of the things you talked about just a minute ago, I wanted to ask you about, is you said you're focusing on a new non-traditional technique. Can you share that with us, what that is?
Well, you do have a little example here. In this little example, you can see the middle part is regular rep weave, but you do have these floats, and these floats happen mostly when in rep weave you use the two weft, of course, and the fine weft is a tie down thread, usually using exactly the opposite of the heavy one, of the heavy weft. If you do something different with this tie down thread, you will have some floats at some places, and that's what we have there. Or you can have several fine thread to make like I would say a cell. So this manipulation of the fine weft in rep weave can give you all kind of new design. It can make some, and depending also how your blocks are line up, that makes a big difference. You get some crosses, you get some real cell, and some big floats. And that's one of the new things that I'm doing. But I have done some others. I'm doing some others. I have about 3 or 4 different, completely different way of doing rep weave.
Now, a number of people have asked if you could give a little bit of a definition of what rep weave is, just an overview. I don't want you to have to give a class. And what are the predominant materials that you use?
Okay, my favorite is mercerized cotton. More
is it 3-2 or 5-2?
Not so much 3-2. 5-2 is definitely my favorite.
Okay.
3-2 gives you some, because the warp, I'm sorry, because the warp has to do a lot of bending around those ribs. So the finer your warp thread, the better the bend will be, the rounder your rib will be. So 5-2 is wonderful. 3-2 is a little heavier, but it's fine if you're doing some rug on the floor or big wall hanging. And using 10-2 is quite fine. So that makes many threads. But a way to get around it is to use 2 threads of 10 together, completely together as a working end. It goes through the reed together, through the heddle together. They don't twist around each other like people may think. And this even gives you a much better rib. In Sweden, they do use the double thread a lot. That's an explanation of that. And unmercerized cotton will be stickier, will work, but it will give you an added problem. There is already a little problem with rep weave because it is so dense. So if it is unmercerized, it's even worse. That's all.
Oh, that's good information to know, especially if someone's working. Now, one of the biggest characteristics of rep weave is that the warp is closely together. So like if you're doing a 5-2, what would your set be?
The first 5-2, usually it is 40 ends per inch. 40 ends, or even 48. When I do the wall hanging, it's 48 to make sure that it's really strong and has, drape well, fall well. That's one characteristic. It has to be very dense because we don't see the weft at all. It's completely covered. We see it at the edge, curling up, And the fine weft is just a dot. We never see it very well also. And the characteristic of rep weave, it is dense warp to weft, alternating. That's how it is. And it is a block weave that require two shaft per block.
What is the material you use for the thick in your weft?
Okay, the thick, at the very beginning, when I started doing rep weave was in the 80s, people were using mop cotton. Okay, which I think is terrible because if you use mop cotton for your placemat and you wash them, it just starts not falling apart, but getting all fuzzy and it's not neat anymore. So for my heavy weft, you don't have very much to find to get heavy weft in stores on like this. Yes, there is a couple of places. It's expensive and the colors it's limited. So myself, I like to match the color of the edge with my heavy weft because it's going to be part of it, So I usually make it myself. And for most of my weaving, especially if I use 5/2, I have about 12 thread of 5/2 together. I don't use any special thing to do except my ball winder. And very often you don't need to have all the thread exactly the same color. Right now I'm doing something with dark plum. Well, I have a very dark navy in it too, and black, and nobody knows. It's fine too.
You're sneaky. You've exhibited a lot, and we have people watching who are just starting out. So what information or suggestions would you give to them as they start out? How do you start to exhibit?
I think people should show their weaving at the beginning, is immediately, and because something else is that when you enter any kind of show, there is a good chance there is a judge who will give you feedback.
Oh.
I think the feedback, sometimes you are very angry at the feedback and sometimes you say, oh, good idea. So I would suggest that they start doing the guild shows or even maybe the fair shows at the very beginning and go on to the conferences of the area, and maybe go on to Convergence or whatever, but the more you enter, the more comfortable you will be. I think and it's exciting. It's exciting to see your piece hanging. It's exciting to get maybe recognition in a certain way. It keeps you going. I think it's a good way to do that.
Well, if you don't mind me asking, did you ever have a juror give you some advice that you found really helpful? Do you remember any time that you got something that really helped?
Oh, you're catching me there. I don't remember that. Yeah, actually I did. I remember that was not rep weave though, but I remember a jury saying that weave is not okay for towels. And they were right. It was not okay for towels. There were too many floats in the back. So forget it. No, but even in rep weave, but sometimes, people maybe just don't know exactly what is correct in rep weave because it's a special weave. It's not one of the big traditional one, I think.
Right. Well, why don't we go to some questions? We have lots of questions. So let's go to some of the questions, and we may have to jump back to images we saw at the beginning.
Yeah.
But on that maze, was that an 8 shaft?
8 shaft, but with a lot of pickup.
A lot of pickup. Okay.
Yep. With a lot of pickup.
And then do I see a loom behind you? Is that your loom?
Oh, this is my little studio in Vermont where we are quarantining. So I have only one little loom here. Yep, it's my Harrisville. each half 22 inches. I have done a lot of work, but at home I have about 10 loom.
Really? Do you have a
Yeah,
favorite?
well, because I teach, I have some students upstairs, so.
Do you have a favorite loom?
Depends for what you're doing. My favorite, my good one, the maze, for example. I made also a big hammock. You know, it's on my Colonial, Leclerc Colonial, 60-inch wide.
Can you talk a little more about your color choices? How do you know the colors are going to work when you look at them?
You never
That's
know.
the great question everybody wants to know.
You never really know. It can be really exciting, or it can be, oh my God, what did I do there? Fortunately, you know, I dress my loom front to back. So when my warp is all in front of me and I said, this green really doesn't fit there, I can remove those thread, hang them in the back and put new thread, if it is not too many, of course, and put a new color there that will be much better. I can do that. And I have done it more than once, but very often, you know, the color, maybe I'm a little stuck in my color scheme. You know, I just do pretty much the same. I really have sometimes to really kick myself and get something else going.
Your colors are very vibrant, though. They're beautifully
I do like color. You know, when I started doing rep weave in the 80s, you didn't have colors in rep weave. It was always off-white and blue, or off-white and green, maybe 3 colors, but never more than 3 colors.
How did you give yourself permission to do something different?
Because I like colors. Because I like colors, and I really, that's how it happens, you know.
Well, good for you. That's amazing to think that those weren't. I look at your colors behind you. They're gorgeous back there. Now, speaking of color, do you, Lori Breslauer, I probably pronounced her name wrong. She wants to know, do you dye your colors? Do you dye your yarn?
No. I decided weaving was the only thing I was going to do. I was not going to spend time dyeing my colors. No.
Do you have a source that you really like?
Well, most of my 5-2 is UKI.
Okay.
That's the one that I use the most.
And then
I have to say something I forgot. I have to say that I do use carpet warp too. Carpet warp is inexpensive compared to the mercerized cotton. And it works extremely well for rugs and for placemat. And also, you don't need to put as many ends, you know, it just fills in. I think it's 32, but you can do placemat at 24 ends. And that's how usually my students, you know, I start them when they start rep weave. I don't want them to put 500 ends right away. You know, they would run away probably. So I usually give them something with carpet warp, which is a little bit easier for them.
Yeah, I found that, I'd like to hear your opinion. I think the carpet warp colors are richer than when I first started weaving in the 80s, they were kind of dull. I think the idea, it's a rug, but it seems now the colors are so much more vibrant than these.
Absolutely. And it's a huge, I mean, a palette is enormous. It's really so many different colors. You can really do nice arrangement.
Yeah. There's some how-to questions that I don't think we're going to be able to go through. Oh, Kelly Broughton wants to know, what kind of a shuttle do you use for the thick yarn?
I use a stick shuttle.
A stick shuttle?
For both of them, because the stick shuttles helps you clear the shed. And also I kind of beat my open shed with it before passing the weft. It really helps to pack well. So I am completely 100% with stick shuttle, unless it's very wide. When it's very wide, then I will use a ski shuttle for the heavy,
Okay.
and a boat shuttle for the fine, but I will, my husband made me a very long sword to clear the shed and to help with this, because it's sometimes the problem.
Nancy Everham wants to know, what inspires you to create a piece? And do you ever get a block? And what do you do about that?
Of course, you do get a block. And well, yeah, sometimes, you know, you just, maybe that's the reason I'm doing all those new rep weave, because I just didn't know what else can I do with a regular rep weave. But also, if I have a block, you know, then I weave a scarf or a blanket. You know, I completely change the weaving, the type of weaving. But sometimes it's true. You can be, then, you know, you let it rest. When you're stuck, you had an idea maybe, and it's not working. You let it rest. Somehow, maybe in the middle of the night, you will remember, oh, I should do it this way, and it will work. And that's it. It happens to everybody.
Now, do you have projects on multiple looms, like
Oh, yeah.
project here, project there, and you go
Yeah,
back and forth?
Yeah, absolutely. But right now, because we are mostly here, it's mostly on this loom here. But at home, you know, I have partially a blanket on my big loom. I have another small loom in my own studio that had placemats on. And as I said, you know, I have about 7 looms upstairs, but they are all for my students there.
Now, I was curious, you said something about a commission earlier. Do you do commissions? Do you like commission work?
No, not at all.
Can you say why?
Not at all. Actually, that commission was really a surprise, because the physician building at Yale has a lot of art around. It can be, they have a lot of sculpture and painting and photography. And somebody had asked me to put something in one of their show. And I had several pieces there. And when they had that, they wanted to have a nice big piece. But I think for a place like this, it's difficult, because you have to be very careful what you're using. You know, there is this whole thing, Scotch guard and all, I don't know, all kind of things you have to. My piece is behind plexiglass, actually. It could not be just in the open like this.
Yeah. Somebody was asking, Lillian Whipple, what is your fine weft? She wanted to know.
Usually 10-2 on mercerized cotton. And if it is, sometimes I've been using sewing thread, but rarely. It's when I make tiny little rep weave, but usually it's 10-2.
10-2, okay. Now, when you put a warp on, this is from Danielle Brodeur. I'm probably pronouncing your name really badly. Do you do one piece at a time? Do you try to do a variety of pieces? How long are your warps? Do you do long warps? Or?
Well, depends what it is. For example, right now I have a little wall hanging on my loom here, because I wanted to try something with an undulating twill that I had seen. I would say my warp is about 2.5 yards long. It's going to be just one piece. I may have a little bit left over to fool around with, but my piece is probably about woven 40 something inch, 42 inches. I don't have a specific, but when I make when I make my placemat, it's always at least 6 placemat. One thing I do a lot, which actually is extremely popular, is that many times when I try something new, I make it the size of a pot holder. You know, it's what, 9 inches wide, and you try all those different treadling and combination, and you have pot holders galore, and tell you, because I still used to sell to some of the galleries, they go like hotcakes. They're always gone. So
Now, do you do that on your big loom, or do you use a
no,
sampler loom? Or
on the big loom, I don't do such small things. On my little Harrisville, I do that.
oh, okay.
Those sampling.
Now, can you do? Somebody was asking about rigid heddle. Can you do rep weave on a rigid heddle?
You can do, the only thing is that you cannot do what we say a really tight warp. You can do a loose rep, as I call it. So the weft will be seen a little bit. It may be hard to beat it really tight, but you still can do some table runners very well. Yeah, absolutely. And actually, some people have been experimenting with two heddles, two reeds. You know, you can put two reeds in some of the rigid heddles, so that makes it, you can have it a little bit tighter. You can have your warp tighter than denser. That's what I meant.
So with rep, you really need to beat hard then to get that.
Yeah. If it's flimsy, you know, it will not hold very well.
Well, I lost her. Linda Hardison has a great question. And I always wonder this of people who are artists, is what is a typical day in your studio like? Like, how much time are you designing versus actually making? And then you teach a lot. So
yeah. Well, not now. Well, now I have been doing, it's not true. I've been doing some Zoom classes, which took a lot of time to prepare, to get together, an enormous amount of time. So I just finished one on rep weave. All you wanted to know about rep weave. It was 4 sessions, and I'm going to redo it, this one. And but my typical day is like this. Usually I like to weave in the morning, and also because I'm starting to have problems with my hands and my knees, I don't weave for hours anymore. I used to. So it's always maybe an hour in the morning, an hour and a half. And then I spend a lot of time doing the paperwork, because I'm hoping to get a second book done within a year or 2.
Oh, so we heard it here first.
What?
We heard it here first. There's another book. So yeah. How will that book be?
Those new things that I have been doing, they better be somewhere. So this has been taking me a lot of time too, to clean up, to have everything perfect. Making the first book taught me one thing, that good records is extremely important. So this is what I'm doing. I'm spending a lot of my time in front of.
Can you give us a hint of what the new book's going to be?
Well, it will be in a non-traditional, classic and non-traditional rep weave. So some things will be very classic, and then I will show what can happen if you don't follow strictly the rules of rep weave. And that book actually have some sampler, because I did need the sampler myself. So my idea was, first in each chapter is to have a sampler and then some possibilities of application of that. But it's not ready. I just want you to know.
We're eagerly awaiting for the next book. So are you still teaching? Anu Bhatti wants to know if you're teaching any classes on Zoom next. Are you still teaching, or can they find that on your website?
I think I'm going, it may not be on my website, because I'm doing this through my school. I'm trying to support my school, who is closed, you know, and need help. So it is from at the Creative Art Workshop in New Haven. This is where I will teach a Zoom class on rep weave.
Okay.
My
Creative
other
workshop.
school, the other school where I teach, actually in the Guilford Art Center, I will be teaching in person at the end of March, because they have been open, but I was not willing to teach. But by the end of March, hopefully, first of all, I got my 2 shots, so I hope it will help. And I really miss my student badly.
But you teach at home, right? When you say upstairs,
And
you're
at
talking about
home
Connecticut?
also, I teach at home, but it really, it's a small place. So I have to make big adjustment there to teach. But I hope also, by the middle of the spring, I have several people in there that already have their shots because they are doctors, or I don't know, one is a pharmacist. They have their shots, so they feel a little ready to go. So we'll see.
Kathy Rogue says, do you sell your work at galleries or at craft shops?
Both, at both places. But I do have to say, I don't sell as much as I used to, because I don't like producing anymore as much as, and I don't weave as long as I used to. So I do have things in some of the craft shop. I didn't do fairs. I don't do fairs. And some of the galleries have always been doing it for years.
So how do you get into a gallery or a craft store? Do you just walk in and show them your work and say, I'd like to be in here? I've never done it, so I don't know.
Well, yeah, you inquire because you need to be juried. So you inquire what should I prepare to be taken into a possible new person into your gallery, and they tell you, and you bring all your pieces and whatever, they will be jurying by several people, and that's how it happens usually.
Someone is asking, Gail Ross wants to know, do you ever use variegated yarn for your weaving, or do you always use solids?
I haven't very much, it's not true. Somebody had given me a few warps that had been space dyed, and of course I used them, but I use them with also some really, what I did make is some blocks with some of the space yarn and some block with solid yarn. That's what I did, but I don't usually, I guess it's because of me. I'm so maybe strict about my colors. Once you get variegated into the warp, you have to be careful you don't have a carnival there. I mean, it's maybe a little too much.
I like that. You don't have a carnival.
Well, it may be a little too much sometimes.
Good point.
Yeah.
Renee is asking about countermarch versus a jack loom for packing rep weave. Do you have both a countermarch and a jack loom?
No, I have only jack type loom. And the thing is that I want to tell this person with countermarch, if you have countermarch, is that I use skeleton tie-up for my 8 shaft, my 4 blocks, because you don't have to retie underneath. You have all the flexibility in the world, but it doesn't work with countermarch. You have to retie. So that's my only, we do in the school where I teach, we do have a countermarch or 2. We do use them, but it's just one thing that I didn't know, but that somebody who had a countermarch, I can't use your tie-up, Lucienne. So I had to, this is why in the book, a couple of places, I have both. I have the regular tie-up and then the skeleton.
But they're both good for packing in the weft?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. No, countermarch is perfect.
Oh, good.
It's perfect. Absolutely.
Someone was asking, and I know this kind of puts you on the spot. Do you happen to have a drawing there with you of how you sketch out your work?
No.
Okay, I'm sorry. Sorry, Sandra, we don't have that.
I'm at the wrong place for that.
It must be hard living in two places, and
it is.
It is.
Actually, by March, I think we're going to be more in Connecticut because I'm getting tired of doing halfway. So it is tough.
Sue Garber wants to know, do you ever use cloth like rag rug for your rep weave?
Very rarely, but I would use it for making nice rugs. That's something I am planning to do on my big loom, is to have a few. We have some rugs here that could be replaced. And that's definitely something I would use. One thing I want to say about rug, and I didn't at all, because you must be wondering, how come I never use wool?
Mm.
Okay, I did use wool. The only thing is that wool, it's really difficult to pack it very hard. So if you're going to use wool, usually it would be for a rug. That rug is not going to be really staying nice and flat on the floor. It's going to be a little bit flimsy. I could not get that. I know I have a friend of mine who does this. She doesn't do really rug. She does wall hanging with wool. She had adjusted her looms with very heavy beater, and so I didn't want to do this. I didn't want to try even this kind of thing. So wool is not one of the best things to use.
Now, for the weft, the thick weft,
yeah,
is there any difference in weaving if you use cloth or if you use mop or if you use thread?
No.
Okay.
No, it's the same. It's the same. Well, you need to have the correct thickness. Oh, and rags, what it is, at the turn, you have to really twist them well. You twist them before laying back in the shed, so it stay together very well. It's like mine, I have 12 threads together. I need to twist that, otherwise you would have a thread kind of sticking out all the time.
Janet Morrow wants to know, is your book suitable for someone who's done a fair amount of weaving but never rep weave?
Well, actually, everybody's saying my book is really a book to learn rep weave. It's really interesting because when I was putting it together, I realized I didn't have an easy rep weave. I had things starting too complicated very quickly. So what I did at the very beginning is that a piece that's done in 3/2, so you don't have too many ends, and it's only 2 blocks and it's simple. But the whole first part of the book is really important to read. And unfortunately, people don't read the beginning. They don't usually. I have a few people who read it, said that was really good. I mean, I learned a lot. People go straight to the project, and also I do have a lot about how to draft rep weave, it's a tutorial. My book is totally a tutorial.
I use it a lot. I have sticky notes and underlines and marks and bookmarks. I found it very good as a teacher, and I find I go back to it and reread it. Like you said, you got to keep reading it. Oh, how do you finish your rugs? Sandra Barron wants to know, do you wet finish them, and can you hand wash or machine wash or steam?
Okay, I never wash the rugs. I never wash the rug. The only thing I will do is that you have to really wait to let them relax. They were under tension for a long time. So it's like other rug, I guess. You just let them relax. I make hems. I don't like fringes on rugs, especially with so many ends. I just make hems. I don't wash them, but if I have to wash them, I will not put them in the washing machine. I will not, because my rugs are, wider. So first of all, it would not be a good idea. Wash them in the tub. Probably that's what I would do. Yeah.
Do you keep a lot of your work, or do you find that you sell it, give it away?
I'm giving away, you know, a lot. I have so much at home right now. If somebody likes something, take it. Really, it is like that.
I'll be up next week.
Okay, tell me what you want. Lots of things from the books are still around. You know?
Oh, that would be great. That would be great. I think I asked this earlier, but I'm not sure we got the answer to it. Where do you buy your carpet warp? You said you got your other from UKI. Where do you get your carpet warp?
Great Northern Yarn Company, something like that.
Uh-huh. Is it Maysville, or do you care?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
What somebody's asking, Carolyn at Hole's asking, what is your favorite way to secure the beginning and the ends of your rep weaving? And you said you don't like doing fringe. Do you sew cloth onto the end, or do you just
no, I make a hem with a fine weft only, just plain weave.
Mm-hmm.
And triple fold it very often. In the wall hanging, sometimes I don't like to see the hem, so it's behind. But if I know that's a piece that I will be using both sides, the hem is part of it. Yeah.
Someone was asking, what are your inspirations? Like, do you see something and it's like, oh, I want to try to represent that in blocks, or what is your inspiration?
Well, for example, it's interesting. The piece that I have on the loom now, I was giving a Zoom class on drafting, but regular drafting, you know, for everything. And one of the piece, we were doing profile draft, and the draft was an undulating twill. And when you wove it, you made the draft completely symmetrical. I thought that was very interesting because every other line was straight and every other line was undulating. And I said, gee, that could be fun to use that with the blocks in rep weave. And it is fun. It is fun, actually. I like that very much. But that was one thing that I wanted to do. Oh, you know, things I always wanted to do. For example, I made a big hammock for our
Oh, I'd love to see that. That'd be amazing.
That hammock was so much fun to do. It's, you know, you just hope it works. For a piece like this, it had to work.
You seem to really enjoy your weaving.
Absolutely.
To hear you keep saying it was fun, it was fun. What do you tell your beginner weavers about having fun? I feel like my beginner weavers are just so nervous about making a mistake. They aren't having fun. How do you get your beginner weavers to have fun? Well,
you know, they have to relax. It's true that there are some people that don't relax. There are some people that are very tight, neat. Everything has to be perfect. Everything has to be straight from the very beginning. Come on, it's not going to happen at the beginning. You're not going to have the best selvage in the world and so on. So you have to just be very happy, I mean, of what you did. I always said, look, you couldn't do this. And now look at what you just did. It's really nice. And well, it's not always fun, okay? It's not always fun when something totally destroyed. When my computer is completely destroyed, everything that I just worked for the last few months, I was not laughing.
I bet. You've really rallied today too. So good job. Good job.
Yeah.
Well, I've enjoyed having you here so much. Thank you so much. It was great hearing all about your work. And if you want to see more and learn more about Lucienne, please go to her website, lucienne-repweave.com. And there's lots on her work and information about her book and her classes. Special thank you goes out to Made in America Yarns for sponsoring today's Textiles and Teas. Go to their website and see all of their beautiful yarns and some of their novelty yarns. If you or your guild or your business would like to sponsor Textiles and Tea, please go to our website, Weave, Spin, Dye, and you can sign up there. Textiles and Tea is supported by the generous donations to the Fiber Trust. If you would like to see more programming, please support HGA by becoming a member or donating at weavespindye.org. If you missed part of today's program, or you want to watch it again, or you want to share it with someone, Textiles and Tea is recorded and can be viewed on HGA's Facebook page. And again, thank you so much for being here today. And next week, we're going to have tea with Robbie LaFleur. Thank you all. Have a great week and happy tea.